you had a very important meeting on Wednesday. I know that the documents come out in the news. It's gone everywhere with this leaked letter. The first thing I want to touch on is they mention completing the season is seen as a priority. Is that something that was drilled into you, that this season must be completed?
Well, I think everybody said that from day one, and I think the biggest concern clubs have got generally is that if we don't complete the season, then there's an opportunity for the broadcaster rights, which is obviously Sky, and main sponsor Sky Bet potentially coming back and saying they want some of the money refunded because they've not fulfilled the full number of games. So there's always been the knock-on effect, the potential knock-on effect, that if we didn't finish the season and the main broadcaster and the sponsor, for example, commercial rights, could potentially come back and ask for some of the money back, which would then have a knock-on effect in clubs' cash flows, because that those monies are coming to the clubs.
There were some key dates mentioned. May the 16th, they said possibly the earliest players could go back to training. Is that something that you feel at this stage especially is quite an optimistic statement to put out?
No, obviously that came out, and then we had a League One conference call with Rick Parry himself and our board members from League One. It was stressed, and that it is the most optimistic scenario for players to come back in mid-May. My personal opinion is I think that's going to be really, really hard. By all accounts, the latest advice and estimations are that whilst the peak might be in London in the next 7 to 10 days, the rest of the country is behind that, and that might be beginning of May, which obviously with the fact that they're suggesting the earliest for the players to come back is mid-May is possibly a tad optimistic. But the EFL have put that out to all the clubs on the basis of, if everything went well in a best case scenario. Unfortunately, with the leaked document coming out, everybody's jumped onto it and suggested that that's when it's going to happen. But I think nobody knows just now how long this is going to last. We don't know exactly when the peak's going to be. But football will only return, whether that's players training and matches, after that, once it is safe to do so. Because the last thing we as a football club want to do is potentially bring players back in the middle of May, when the epidemic is still ongoing, and we're at the peak or just past the peak. We need to make sure that it's safe, and we get the go-ahead from government and health professionals too.
And the document mentioned they guessed that it would be about 56 days to complete the season. Is that something that you see is feasible?
Well, I think we have to play a lot of games. I think we're all realistic to know that at least it's the summer period if we are going back around then. They're talking about potentially playing, I think it would be 2 or 3 games, 3 games a week kind of thing, if you like, between Saturday and Saturday. They've obviously got to factor in the playoffs, semi-finals and finals, and trying to retain the whole structure of that. So that adds to the number of games. But I think it's a very trying circumstances, and I think all clubs are open to whatever it takes to try and complete the season. Obviously they talked about behind closed doors too, which isn't ideal in anybody's case. I think the last thing we need is football behind closed doors. But some of the other leagues are cancelling it and not playing any games at all. Avoiding the season, which also isn't right. There's no ideal scenario here, to be honest with you. So it's just one of these ones we just have to wait and see at the moment, and see how things pan out, and see how this. Hopefully, we can get past the peak sooner rather than later, and then we can start and plan from there. But at the moment, we can't make any plans. I've said to Sam yesterday that they're talking about potentially putting it back to mid-May, but I said realistically, in my own opinion, I can't see that actually happening. I think that date will probably pass, and we'll probably end up having to review it again.
Have you had any indication as to the length of the gap between one season finishing and the new season starting?
Yeah, well, they've spoken before about potentially 2 weeks. They spoke in the conference call potentially 3 weeks. Obviously, clubs who are involved in the playoffs would obviously have extended season rather than the ones who are not involved in the playoffs. But I think the PFA and their discussions with the PFA, that's one of the things they've been speaking about, is whether they could have a minimum of 2 week break between playoff finals, so they can then restart again 2 weeks later. But I think realistically, most clubs, it might be 3 to 4 weeks. They also mentioned yesterday about, somebody's opinion was that we might not be restarting the new season till September, which again, listen, we're all guessing just now. We have no idea when this season is going to finish, never mind next season is going to start. But they obviously have to have as many plans in place, so they've got various options depending when we can pass the worst of this epidemic.
Now, there seems to be some confusion over this 125 million Premier League money. It's not necessarily all it's cracked up to be, is it?
No, the 125 million, I got word of this last Friday from local media, actually, believe it or not. The Premier League had made a statement saying they were giving 125 million, passing it down as front-loaded payments that were becoming due for next season, etc., for the EFL clubs and also the National League. But obviously nobody had really had any information on this. We got some information on it yesterday. The money isn't what I hoped it might be, if I'm honest. I think when you hear 125 million and then you start working out in your head, well, 80% to the Championship, 12% to League One clubs and 8% to League Two, and you divvy that up, it looks like a reasonable size of money. But it turns out that more than half of that money is actually parachute payments due to clubs who are now playing in the EFL who have been relegated from the Premiership. So majority of that money is actually parachute payments. And then when you then take into account, obviously, as I said a few minutes ago, that 80% goes to the Championship, you're looking at over 90% of that money is likely to go elsewhere other than League One and League Two.
So this money, just to clarify something, it's not something extra that's been given. It's something that already exists. Yeah,
basically the way it works just now is the EFL get solidarity money, which makes up half of the money. We get 1.4 million approximately as central monies from the EFL every year, which is paid either, the solidarity is paid in 2 instalments in August and January. But the solidarity money comes from the Premier League. Now that solidarity money, which makes up half of our central monies from the EFL, they're looking, I think it's half of that, they're potentially front loading to us, which the EFL haven't actually received the monies as yet, and they haven't, so therefore they haven't distributed any money at all. But you know, half of our money is made up of solidarity money, which comes from the Premier League. So it isn't what you're asking me is, it's not new money, it is money that would come for next season. So albeit it's good to get any kind of money, and I don't want to seem ungrateful that the Premier League have, you know, are offered to give some solidarity money, whether it's half of our normal solidarity money now rather than later. But we are going to have a problem going forward, or our clubs are going to have a problem going forward, because, well, it might help us over the next few weeks, and a lot of clubs are struggling to get through the next few weeks. It might help with clubs in the short term, but the long term issue then is, you know, we've already been, any money we've had from the EFL is money we would be due for next season, and money we're due over the next 3 months anyway. And with the solidarity money potentially now coming over the next few weeks, which we hope will come into the clubs too, that again is money that we would have got next season. So it helps us in the short term, but long term, income is then going to be an issue for next season when it starts again, because we've already had most of the money.
Just quickly, finally, have you had any more clarification on player contracts and how that's going to work out with extensions?
We got a communication last night that talks are still ongoing between the Premier League, the EFL, and all parties. Obviously, UEFA involved in that, FIFA involved in that. Some players' contracts obviously are due to expire on the 30th of June throughout the country, and they're looking at ways to try and get round that, because if we did have to play games in June, then how do you get players to keep the integrity of the competition, to retain those players? At the moment, any player whose contract expires on the 30th of June, there is a current arrangement whereby clubs have to pay them for the month of July unless they have found alternative employment. So they're looking to see if that could be used potentially for, so they can't sign any elsewhere in the meantime, and are retained by the club whose contract, where their contract expired on the 30th of June. Whether that will, you know, go through, I think at the moment, it's, you know, discussions are ongoing, and we just have to wait for all parties involved, because it's quite a complex business when you've got FIFA, UEFA, EFL, the Premier League all involved in it, plus the FA too.